So Joel, when everyone talks about healthy homes, we usually talk about thermal comfort, noise, vibrations, and air quality. Why do you care so much about air quality?
Yeah, so air quality is obviously a fundamental part of human health. So we know there's plenty of research from other countries, other institutions that show poor air quality leads to reduced lifespans and poorer standard of living.
And how did you get into that? Like, what made you focus on air quality as a job?
I'm going to say I stumbled into it. So I started at Fantech probably a bit over 10 years ago now, started in a slightly different space. Obviously Fantech's a ventilation business, so it was about that. But first and foremost, in those early days, it was about the people I was working with. They're great people, but I very quickly found myself in this space where we looked at providing better air quality solutions in the high performance space, and that's kind of what I love.
What's your background?
Mechanical engineering and then a master's in some sustainable building design.
So you work for Fantech, and I obviously want to give them credit because obviously you're sitting here right now and we use a lot of their products. So Fantech's a massive company. So can you maybe just very high level touch on like who Fantech is?
Yeah, okay. So Fantech's a business that's been around more than 40 years now, more than 50 years actually, and has always been in that air movement space. We don't compete with the Mitsubishis or the Daikins. We don't do split systems or VRV type stuff. We work in the air movement, air quality space. We do some attenuation products, and we do a bit of large air handling, heat recovery type equipment. But it's a business that's really kind of knows its knitting in that space, and we've become a pretty proud, successful business there.
So you're the Zender component of Fantech. Is that what you are?
Correct, yeah. So I'll loop that more as the residential home ventilation space.
The HRV guy.
It's the HRV guy.
Was the HRV guy. Yep.
And so that is definitely a niche within Fantech.
Yeah.
It's a growing niche. We've recently been bought out by a UK business that has definitely lots of expertise and capacity in that home ventilation HRV space, and so it's a really good synergy.
You can maybe not answer this question, but since you've been bought out and you've just said that they have experience in that, they have their own HRV that they might make Zender redundant?
Definitely not. It's a complementary product.
Okay.
So it expands our offerings, which is a great outcome, and there's lots of enthusiasm about them.
It's a good trained answer.
It is a good trained answer, isn't it? So
yeah. The reason I ask is like, I'm Zender or nothing, me being selfish here, like I was like, oh shit, what happens then?
Yeah.
So there is this security, because at the end of the day, like the Zender products that we use, like they're by far the best.
They are the premium player in the market.
But I mean, I think it's good to hear that there are other products coming in, because I think if we're going to roll out, and we'll talk about performance construction in a second, but if we're going to roll out this stuff on a broader scale, not everyone can afford the Q series.
Exactly. Yep. You need tiered strategy.
But I'm going to go the opposite way. Is it that people just don't value it enough and don't understand the air quality? So then when you have the best, like sometimes we need the best in these things.
Yeah, okay. So
because it's air quality. We're not talking about the stone that, hey, you can substitute something else that looks pretty good. Yeah. This is your air quality. This is your health.
I'm gonna argue that from another side, saying something's better than nothing. If we can roll out better ventilation across, it's like, it's like the 7-star thing, right? If we build every single home to 7 stars, actual 7 stars, documented and then verified 7-star homes, it's going to make such a bigger difference in our building stock than if you and I built 5 passive houses a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if our homes were properly ventilated, and who gives a shit to a degree, what ventilation system's in there, as long as there's a ventilation system in there that's doing what it's meant to do, filter fresh air and extract used air, then I don't think that's a bad thing.
You're right in that context. It is about the filtration and the reliable airflows. What spending more buys you is higher efficiencies and lower noise levels, better controls.
Okay, so I reckon we should break this down a little bit. So I want to go to controlled versus natural ventilation, because I think that's something we should explore first, because you were talking about requiring mechanical ventilation with these, and they will range from a ceiling fan, which is what most people understand, in extraction fan in a sort of a bathroom. That's what mechanical ventilation is, and we're all familiar with that. But then there's natural ventilation. So will you just sort of touch on the difference between them two first before we jump too much into the mechanical side of things?
Yeah, okay. So our current building code is really built up around mechanical extract from wet areas, laundries, bathrooms, toilets, mechanical extract from kitchens.
Yeah.
NCC 2022 has made that really clear. That's now got to be externally ducted. And these are for moisture removal, but also for some odour control there. What we don't have is any guidance around mechanical ventilation as a supply air solution, so fresh air to habitable rooms in a Class 1 building.
Yeah.
And a Class 2, so an apartment building.
Yeah. So just to confirm, just so I got that in my head, their code at the moment only talks about extract. Only mandates extract.
Correct, and mandate is probably even too strong a word.
Okay, suggests, alludes to.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Parts are mandated, parts are if you install something, it must deliver X litres a second.
Right.
So even the wording is weaker than it really needs to be. What is really weak though for residential building is that fresh air supply, and we're still at a stage where the code talks about the fact that fresh air can come via your windows. And we all know that windows are problematic for a number of reasons. We open them, we don't know how much airflow we get through, so it's uncontrolled. If it's cold and it's a really windy day, we get lots of air, we pay an energy penalty. On top of that, now we've got security. We're building in a city particularly, we've got security issues, we've got noise issues, we've got pollution issues, dust issues. There's just so many reasons why relying solely on operable windows as a ventilation solution for fresh air won't be reliable.
And it's like no one knows what the air exchange is outside. You're relying on the clients to open the windows and doors. What if they don't do it?
Yep.
If it's 40 degrees or 35 degrees outside like yesterday, no one's opening their windows because you're running the aircon. And then you've got if it's freezing outside, like it's 5 degrees and you're heating the whole house, you don't want that draft through. Like it was like when you're younger, mum and dad were like, shut the door, you're letting the draft through. And all of a sudden now we want to open the windows to allow that draft through. It makes no fucking sense.
Oh, you're letting the heat out, Sonny. Get that door closed.
Yeah. So what you're trying to do is allow this really tight envelope, essentially. We want to take back control of the house, and that's what's called controlled ventilation, and introduce a system that is going to extract the air out and then replace it with fresh air.
Yep.
But I'll before we get too far across the HRV and to the supply side, is when we're having, you're probably going to get asked the question a lot, and I know you've been asked this a lot, is at what point do you need mechanical ventilation?
Yeah, okay.
How many air changes? What is the magical number?
It's my most hated question ever. There isn't logically a tipping point where on one side it's like it's a waste of money, on the other side it's awesome. So that's a bit of a fallacy, that logic. What I would say is mechanical ventilation is important across all buildings. Now, if it's a really leaky building, so we're out 10 air changes plus, then you're not going to get a lot of benefit from the heat recovery side. You should definitely still have mechanical extract from bathrooms and other wet areas.
Which is what everyone knows.
Correct, yep. That's what everyone knows. And you can start thinking about entry-level products that just give you some continuous fresh air flow to habitable spaces just for air quality. But at that stage, heat recovery is not doing much for you.
So there's a proof of concept. People understand that. They understand if you have a shower and you don't extract that water or moisture from the steam, you get mold. So people understand this. It's just now we want to talk about the whole house.
And the fresh air delivery. And it's one of those things, it's like eating too much fatty food. It's not going to hurt you in day 1, day 2, day 3 or day 4, but over the duration you spend in your house, that's going to be a real problem for your health.
I really like that analogy. I hadn't actually thought about that. When we talk about air changes too, and correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, we might test a house and it might be 5 air changes, right? But the blower door, which is how we test our homes, is testing the whole house. Now, it's the sum of all the leaks. Some of the rooms, like bathrooms, where you've got lots of waterproofing and tiles generally, is probably going to be more airtight than other rooms. Now, and you might have a huge amount of leaks underneath the front door, right? That's where you might be getting a huge amount of leaks through the windows and stuff like that. So even if you are picking a number, say it's 5, your bathrooms in those wet areas where you are generating a lot of this high humidity and condensation is probably in an area that is probably more airtight and has less chance of that air escaping. So I understand now, and correct me if I'm wrong, why it's really difficult to land on a number.
Yeah, and the other point to that, Hamish, is that it's also trapping those moisture and odours there, but it's also when you turn just that bathroom exhaust fan on, it is saying, hey, it's highly unlikely the makeup air is going to flow from the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's going to potentially come from some other shitty location that's got air quality issues. Out of your roof space from your garage.
So harsh insulation that you got possum piss and rat poo and then all of a sudden there's those glass fibers from the old school insulation, like you're breathing that in. Like,
correct.
Come on, guys.
It's an unknown source.
I mean, and I've got to in very simple terms, why do we need to extract and why do we need to supply? I mean, I know we know the answer to that. In really simple terms, why do we need to do that?
Yeah, so we extract, the logic always is that we extract as close to the source to remove contaminants. And in contaminant, we can be pretty broad and say, look, that's moisture as a contaminant, but it's also odour, it's VOCs, it's particulate matter. So, for example, in your kitchen, it's particulate matter when you fry. And so
you usually explain what particulate matter is.
Yeah, so really fine particles. We're talking kind of non-visible size stuff that stays airborne. It is in the really small, around the PM 2.5 size. It is...
Which is, the technical term is fucking small.
I think it's very small.
Very fucking small. Okay, yep.
Particles of that size are small enough to pass through your respiratory system. And so they're the ones that cause health issues. When they're larger than that, they get trapped in nasal hair and things like that. But that small stuff is dangerous. There's not established acceptable exposure to it.
Yeah, okay.
It's really one of those things that the science is still developing on, but really the current status is avoid wherever possible.
Right, so there's no safe levels.
There's no safe levels that are documented with decent research.
So a poorly ventilated house is making us sick?
Potentially, yeah. Quite potentially.
Yes.
I could say yes, but we would need to make some assumptions that are probably pretty good.
So on that, my opinion is, my personal opinion, there is a poorly ventilated house is making...
So where I live, Maribyrnong City Council, great council, really great people there. They've done a study, and in Maribyrnong City Council, and yes, it is a very multicultural area and different socioeconomic sort of status of different people. But there is a increased, compared to every other municipality, they have an increase in respiratory issues. Okay, now there is issues around refineries, fumes from the cars. There is the transport through all the shipping yards in that area, refineries, all that sort of stuff. Now they've been on a show that, yes, it could potentially be linked to, or maybe a lack of education on certain things, but there is respiratory issues, and that is widely documented. There are other studies. I know there's a study at the moment that's happening with a school in Yarraville where their kids are walking around with these Dyson backpacks to understand the air quality, and it has gone through the roof. And the reason I know this is because my bookkeeper's son has been in it, and she sort of passed me on some of the data. And so these are known. These studies are getting done. They're kind of getting hidden though. And the governments aren't doing enough. It's been in the media recently around the Yarraville with this new tunnel they're building, is they've got the ventilation stacks, and they're saying they can't really, we can't filter the air. It's been like, it's just, other countries are doing it. They're doing it in Korea. We're just not doing it.
For an okay price is what they're not saying in that sentence. We can't tackle this at an acceptable price in our view.
So I've actually written down here, I think it kind of leads in well, is that we talk about the upfront cost and everyone talks about the building cost. So what is the cost on our healthcare system?
Yeah, and that's poorly documented.
But we don't want to know. And what's the value on someone's human life?
Yep. Now, I know the Asthma Association have got good numbers on that. I don't recall them off the top of my head, but for Australia, I believe it's in the billions. So,
that's billions.
Yeah, the Passive House Association is working with billions and billions Asthma Association, and they're well across what those savings are. So, absolutely, there are unmeasured health benefits, unquantified health benefits.
Are they doing enough to push this, or they kind of get pushed to the side or quietened down a little bit?
The association or the asthma? Both? I think so. I think it's always a challenging role to, go in hard enough to get meaningful ears without putting people offside to the point they don't want to deal with in a constructive way.
And I think it's important not to sort of big note the conversation we're having now is that we obviously have an audience that this is going out to, and we're hoping to educate more people about the importance of ventilation. So I think the more of conversations like this that happens, the more people start listening. Because if there's just, I was about to say just the Asthma Foundation, that are a big, pretty significant organisation, but if it's them and then AFA and then it's the builders and then it's homeowners and everyone's like, hang on a minute, what about our internal air environment? What are we doing about it? Then maybe the ABCB might listen up.
They're not trying to listen up. They're funded by the people that are on their boards that are going to actually... They're coming. They really don't care. They move at the slowest person's pace, the lowest common denominator.
Look, I think, and I've said this before actually on various different bits of media, and I've circled this here, like we actually have a choice that we can build above what the NCC is
absolutely
telling us to do.
But this is the issue. The people that we build for have money. The people that are at most risk are the people that don't have the money to be able to put these things in. They're the ones that are generally lower socioeconomic. They're the ones that don't have the money to go to healthcare. They're the ones that have the issue.
I think this is the point I was trying to make before, though. Like, yes, you were talking about Zenda, it's a premium product, but I think this is news to, really good news to me when I hear there's other products coming out which are going to be of a lower cost. Yes, they might not be as efficient with the heat recovery. Yes, they might cost a little bit more to operate, but it's still a positive thing. And I think the more people start asking for this stuff, the more people start listening from a supplier and importer and manufacturer point of view. So we're going to get more products in the market.
Yep.
And then maybe the Zenda price will come down.
And there's also an education piece there as well, pitched at lower socioeconomic groups, because that's usually the other bit that's missing, apart from not having the cash. It's not having the knowledge in that.
But we've always done it this way. We've built houses for 50 years and it's never been a problem.
It's a great statement, isn't it? Until you go to pull the cladding, peel back the cladding, or talk to the owners or the tenants.
So,
and when you peel it back and you get like on the bottom plate, you just see that little thick layer of soot, like it's like an inch high.
I'm gonna paint a picture, Joel, and this is obviously hypothetical. So Matt and I build a house, identical house side by side. I choose to ventilate my house correctly. Matt chooses not to ventilate the house correctly. We're both building the same 140 studs, good insulation, internal, external air tightness barrier, really great windows, identical except for the ventilation system. Tell me a story about how Matt's house is going to perform over a period of time, and tell me how this other house is going to perform.
Yeah, okay. So straight away from a durability perspective, what you've done in building this nice airtight box with insulation is you've set up potentially some condensation risk. And so without...
For both homes, actually.
For both homes, yep.
Yeah, good point.
So I'm assuming identical structure.
Exactly.
What the mechanical ventilation is doing is making sure that moisture has a path out of the building.
Yep.
So whether it become through the wall or roof assemblies or whether it be internally generated, there's a path out of the building. So that's the first point. You've got durability there. Now we get on to thinking about occupant health and comfort. So without that ventilation, it's going to get pretty nasty from a stuffiness perspective. So occupants are going to go to a window. Like, there's really not much choice if you're doing that.
Or are they, though? It's the other thing. They don't know.
Possibly not. I think mostly if you had zero extraction inside your house, it's going to be so humid and nasty in there. You're going to crack open a window. Is that going to solve your problem? That's the real question. Maybe some of the time, maybe it creates those security risks. The other part, obviously, is air quality, and that is basically saying, look, without ventilation, you get accumulation of contaminants. You get VOCs out of your carpets and bench tops. You get CO2 from respiration moisture. You get CO2 from any gas cooking and other particulates in there. So,
and burning eggs.
Correct, and burning eggs, Cameron Munro. So Everyone loves a good fry up at least once in their lifetime, don't they?
So this is probably a good question. And so now we're talking about cultural differences. So some cultures will fry their food in a wok and burn things off, where some are maybe more of a steam or boil, or so then again we're having a whole different conversation that it comes down to, again, that Dan spoken about in Germany, people will open up their windows just as a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Where here we think we open them up, but do we actually do it?
Yeah, correct. I think the number of window opening activities is super low. The Passive House Institute's got some good studies on how many windows and how long you'd need them open for during a day. It's not just open for 20 minutes at the start of the day to purge the air from your house. You need them open every 3 or 4 hours in order to maintain that air quality.
So going back to that example we were talking about before, over a period of time, in the house that is properly ventilated and the house that is not properly ventilated, what are we likely to see in the bathrooms?
In the bathrooms, yeah. So you're going to start to see moisture that can't get away. So you're going to start to see the evidence of mold growth. Those sorts of things are.
And mold's bad, right?
You can just wipe it off, though.
If you're doing a quick reno, quick and flick, you could wipe it off.
So Matt and I are probably being quite facetious here. We know the answer here, but really? I think it's good to paint the picture of like why it's important. And, there's a huge amount of studies on the impact that mold has on, particularly in children, and how bad that is, particularly in growing, developing bodies.
Yep.
So, you have a house that is not managing its moisture and used air correctly, increase in mold, high humidity.
Yeah.
And then, so there's the occupant health, but then there's also the structure health as well.
Correct, yep. So that mold could be surface-borne, where maybe if you're like Maddie, you can get a sponge to it and clear it away.
White King and off you go.
Yeah, White King. It could also be in the structure. So every time you turn a bathroom exhaust fan and it sucks a bit of air through that structure, those mold spores are coming back into your bathroom and into your life.
So I think, just that alone probably paints a picture of, one, how you can think you're doing the right thing by making an airtight and really well insulated structure. And I guess this is why, Passive House is so prescriptive of what they're asking you to do. Ventilation is a massive component in the health of our buildings.
Absolutely. The Europeans seem to be way more science-driven. So they're making code decisions based on hard science versus...
And that's a novel approach.
It is.
So with science is an interesting thing, because we talk about COVID, and has science become this woo-woo thing? Has there been this movement against it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Trumps of the world, COVID saw some pretty bad examples of politics trying to trump science.
Pardon the pun.
That's it. Pardon the pun.
So now when we talk about getting more airtight, we're talking about HRV, ERV, heat recovery ventilation, which becomes a little bit more important with how Hamish and I would build. Do you want to give an explanation of what HRV is, ERV, where this imaginary line of where you're going to need them?
Taking half a step back, HRV and ERV, what are they? So HRV really talks about sensible heat recovery. And to put that in probably easier to understand terms, that means temperature-related heat recovery. So let's say going from 10 degrees to 20 degrees, if we transfer just heat and we get that outcome, that's called sensible heat recovery. If we talk about ERV or enthalpy type heat exchangers, as well as transferring that sensible or that thermal energy, we also transfer moisture. And
So what was that word?
enthalpy.
Enthalpy.
Could I come up with an easier word?
Yeah,
I'm going to forget that. Heat's much easier to remember.
I thought it was energy recovery ventilation for so long. And then I was like, nah, it's the E one.
So there is energy as well. It's a really confusing landscape, and a lot of people use them interchangeably. So we often need to pause and say, what's your climate? What are you really looking for?
And that's why I say that imaginary line. We're talking here in Australia, if you haven't picked up on the accent, maybe just above Sydney, where it's a bit more humid.
So HRV has got the better temperature recovery, full stop. Where we need to think about is moisture. So taking half a step back, if we say comfort isn't just a function of temperature, it's a function of temperature and humidity. So we can have the temperature bang on, but if the humidity is well out of our bounds.
Yeah. What's a good humidity band?
Yeah, so 40 to 60% is probably, for relative humidity, is nice. And temperature-wise, if you're in that 20 to 25 degree slot, there's plenty of literature that talks about comfort bands within those ranges. And so where we start to think about ERV or enthalpy cause is, can we manage the moisture side a little bit better? Now, the moisture side can mean either we've got excess moisture or a bit dry. And so the cases where we might have excess moisture arise from high outdoor air humidity. And so that's where we're starting.
So it's a pressure. It's pressure moving in. Is that right? So pressure goes from high to low. Am I right here?
So there's a moisture transfer gradient. Pressure's perhaps not quite the right word, but we know in Queensland summers we've got really high moisture content in the air and uncomfortably high. If we just brought that in through a HRV type core, we might get the temperature in the right zone, but we've got moisture too high. And so in that warm, humid outdoor air conditions, what ERV allows us to do is to bring the temperature down and also bring the moisture down. The other application, which is rarer in Australia but more common in Europe, is for really cold, dry, basically alpine climates.
I was about to say that because Cam mentioned that, and this was new to me, that say at Mount Hofer, you're probably going to want to put an ERV in.
Yeah, so there you've got the reverse problem in winter because the temperatures are so low and there's ice, you've got very little free moisture in the air. And so by the time that goes through your heat recovery unit, is turned into supply air, your temperatures might be under control, but you might be at a relative humidity of 30%.
Well, okay, and if we were really low humidity, what is the occupants experiencing inside?
Yeah, so it's dryness. So it's got like standing in front of a pedestal fan for an hour. You can sort of barely talk and your lips are stuck together.
Like when you're in Asia and you put the aircon overnight and you wake up and you're like, nah.
That is exactly the problem. That is exactly because we find aircon will remove moisture, but for humid environments like Queensland, when it removes the moisture to get the humidity right, the room's now at about 15 degrees.
Right.
Like that ratio of moisture removal and temperature control is wrong.
So when you have an ERV, are you also suggesting to put a humidifier in the house too?
Not a humidifier. So that application where we need to boost indoor humidity is really only alpine regions.
Okay.
So that's such a small part of construction, and particularly sort of passive house, that maybe there's an application. But the more common one is, do I need a dehumidifier in that Queensland project as well?
And both filter out the air?
No. So the only thing bringing outside air into your airtight box should be your mechanical ventilation system. Everything else should be just doing a recirc. So in your heating and cooling, that's just drawing air in from one part of the house, conditioning it and spitting it back. Same with the dehumidifier. It's taking indoor air and stripping the moisture out, providing it back into the house.
And a HRV or mechanical ventilation, just to be clear, isn't a heating and cooling source.
Correct. As the name sounds, recovery, there needs to be a differential. So if you, for example, locked up your house in summer, left all the blinds up and no shading, and it got to 30 degrees when you returned home, and the outdoor temps were 30 degrees, your HRV is going to do nothing for you. There's no differential to recover. And that's where you need that ancillary air conditioning to get the temps down in the first instance, and then the HRV will help you hold those temps.
And I know the answer to this. You can't just plug your heating cooling system into your HRV and distribute it. It doesn't work like that.
Correct. The airflows are substantially different. You would need to be oversized 2 to 3 times, even in a passive house type building, to deliver enough heating or cooling capacity.
And people tried it.
Yeah, we've tried it. So Fantech's done half a dozen systems like that using some bulkhead AC units. What we found was that the cost, complexity and the resulting capacity just wasn't enough to justify heading down that pathway versus multiple split. There were even advanced iterations that had a recirc loop into the AC. They fundamentally were too complex, requiring too much space. It became difficult solutions, and split system AC units are so cheap. Didn't make sense.
Now, I want to go back to a comment you made before about VOCs, and we're obviously talking about occupant health and a lot of things off gas, carpet, joinery, paint. Does the HRV help extract that off-gassing?
Yeah, so the best way to think about ventilation is it's a dilution strategy for contaminants. So we're not physically like an air purifier trying to filter out or trap those things. What we're doing is ensuring there's enough air change in the building that we keep those diluted. Yeah, in industry speak, it's known as a dilution strategy.
So how often does the air change in a home with a good ventilation system? So let's use the Zended Q350 as an example. How often does the volume of air in that home change?
Yeah, okay. So around about 0.3 to 0.4 air changes per hour. And the reason for that is going higher than that risks that case we talked about earlier of excessive dehumidification. You can drop the relative. If you up at 0.6, 0.7, and we saw a lot of conversations around COVID times saying, look, they're just way too large, too low. We've got to blast lots of air through this building. In order to save us from COVID. The real issue there is relative humidity control.
And something that Matt touched on before, like on average, the Australian home changes its air inside about 17 times, right? And, you saying now that the ventilation system's only doing that, 0.3 times an hour, whereas a normal home is 17. Why don't we just build homes as we've been building homes?
Yeah, so it's about the quality of that air. There's no point having huge amounts if it's unfiltered and we don't know the source of it. And it's also unreliable. That's 17 probably under a 25 kilometre an hour wind. On a still day, it drops to 2 or half.
And correct me if I'm wrong, going back to a point I was talking about before about certain rooms being more airtight than others, given that, our ventilation systems are a balanced system and there's extract and fresh air in strategic place throughout the house. So it's a balanced system. Whereas in a home, it is leaking 17 air changes an hour. Those 17 air changes might be coming out of one room.
Correct. Yep. It is uncontrollable in terms of, is that bathroom actually getting air drawn out of it, or is the bathroom and the toilet odour being pushed back through the rest of the house because of the wind direction, the suctions on the bedroom side of the building? So we're not doing that point extract for contaminants. You're kind of just mixing it all up like a mud pie and hoping it escapes somewhere.
So we're making our buildings airtight. What happens if the power goes out?
Yeah.
Are we all going to suffocate?
That's a classic question. We die, yes. So you've seen all the news articles on the current affair recently of people going down. HRV went out.
Yep. That was sarcasm, by the way. Yeah.
I love A Current Affair. I think it's like the Comedy Channel. It is seriously one of my favourite shows to watch. Like, it is just absolute
It's really like watching a car crash, mate.
It is seriously so funny.
I'm going to have to bring you back to ventilation from A Current Affair. So my best analogy for that is that we are unwittingly already building really airtight buildings without ventilation. And that case is precast concrete apartments. So some of those, without any attempt to build air tightness into them, some of those buildings are getting to 2 air changes and below. And we're not seeing people pass out. We're not seeing people die in those scenarios. So yes, the air quality is really poor. And so they would absolutely be recommended to keep their windows open. Doesn't really make the air quality nice nor comfort, but
it's giving us the means to survive.
Correct, yeah. So, and the same for really airtight building. Open your windows for the short period your power's out. Once the power comes back, the units will start up. They'll have remembered all their settings, so there's no...
And you can still open your windows and doors on a nice day. It's just you have the control, you have the choice.
Correct. That is what it's about, isn't it?
So I've just got my phone here, and I want to make people aware. Now, in the NCC, the moment, National Construction Code, there is a clause that says that we must not exceed a mold index of 3. Otherwise, as builders, architects, whether we're liable.
Yep.
Can you explain what that means? Because what you have essentially is a system that will prevent it if installed correctly. And I think this is something that our industry needs to understand, because we're now at risk.
Yep.
Can I also add to that there's no mandatory revisions to ventilate your home properly in the NCC that would mitigate that.
So you've asked to do something, but there's no guidance on how to do something, but you're liable.
Yeah.
And lawyers are about to make bank on this.
Yep. So my understanding of the mold index terminology there is it's a risk profile. So we're looking at what the chances of that building developing mold are. Clearly, not having ventilation in there is problematic, and it's certainly a necessary backstop to make sure that value doesn't result in actual mold growth.
Yeah. Is there a lack of adoption in this because people just don't understand how to talk about it?
It's a tricky one. So lack of adoption at a building codes board, is that what you're...
No, well, from a building codes board, but to an architect or building designer to a builder, like there's multiple stages that can get stripped out because budget's always a thing and not everyone has a money tree. So from an NCC minimum standard, we don't need it, which excludes probably the whole volume spec industry because why would I put it in?
Yep.
Don't have to. Architects and actively the ones we're working with really want to put it in.
Yep.
But there's always this issue now when we talk about essentially, like, there's still the cost issue. So it's one of the first things that attempt to be stripped out by someone, not just the architect. It could be the client.
Yep.
It could be a builder. So then you're trying to get that out. So is it just how do we then get a wider adoption
of ventilation? Yeah. So I can absolutely see the temptation. It's not mandated in the code, so you can pull it out without any risk to compliance. You can't suddenly reduce your electrical cabling size to save money because that's code driven and standard driven. You're right, it's the education piece. So through those layers from architect to builder to end client, it's about communicating what does making this change, how does that impact your building? And that conversation is very disjointed, non-existent at times. I think it's also a function of, are you actually building for the end occupant? Now, fortunately in resi most of the time we are, but you start getting to apartment buildings or commercial buildings and there's no longer that connection. There's no longer that person who's going to be in that building driving that specification.
Well, didn't the other day, the VBA or whoever in Victoria changing a law around Class 2 buildings that there must be a bond held against the developer or builder for 2 years to warrant the defects? Now, I think this would be a huge issue with mould, with airtight homes, because it will be shown up within 2 years. This is something that's going to happen very quickly.
I reckon it's great. And you hear way too many current affair stories, Matt, particularly in apartments and even Class 1 homes, where they're trapped between a builder who's not done the right thing and
the builder could have done the right thing, it's not spec'd.
Yeah, yep. Or the builder's done the wrong thing and the recourse measures are just really weak.
Without being the risk of not being too clickbaity, this stuff is not complicated. And I think that, if you think about some things that people may not adopt is because maybe they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I completely understand the benefit of good ventilation. And I would say that I'm a normal person. And when explained really simply, you can put 2 and 2 together quite easily. So, let's not poo-poo developers, not poo-poo the NCC. I think what I would like to say right now on the record is that as a builder or a homeowner or a designer, like, this stuff is not complicated to implement into your buildings. It's not, you're not having to change the way that you design and build homes. It's quite a simple thing to add in.
Yeah.
You're not restricted by what you can design. You're not restricted by how big or small the home can be or how it looks.
It's the size of a washing machine. It can go in the laundry like every other job.
There are, we've predominantly been talking about centralized systems, but there are other options. There's decentralized systems as well. Yep. So, like, this stuff, I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not rocket science.
It's not. I think I'm probably sitting with a couple of the bleeding edge builders, And so I'll kind of be nice to builders in general and say there are a lot of elements to building a building, and some of those might be regulatory, planning, permits, dealing with owners who are changing their mind midway through. So I do think the building process as an entirety has got a shitload of moving parts.
Yep. But is there an issue that you can be categorized into three people? One, that you just don't care, you don't do anything about it, you don't know. Cool, I can live with you because at least you don't know. Then you've got the people who are actively doing something and have understood it and changed. The people that I hate, the people that have gone to the effort to understand it, that know what happens when it doesn't go right and the benefits of these things, like what happens with them, and then don't do anything about it. Yeah. They're the worst people because they actually understand it and then they just choose actively not to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they struggle with communicating to their clients why it should be done that way. I think that's the real weakness.
And that's what I go back to when we talk about adoption. People just don't know how to talk about it. And it's very simple. Do you like clean air? Yeah, I like breathing clean air. Well, want him.
We see that all the time with younger builders come through, have done the passive house training course or something equivalent, and are struggling to pick up their first passive house project. And it's because they are struggling with that communication.
Yep.
This is what I want to build for you and this is what it'll deliver.
This is probably a really great spot to finish on. If you were stuck in an elevator for a couple of minutes with that young builder who was really struggling to communicate that last piece to a homeowner, what advice would you give them?
Would you say? So get on board and start building that way as quickly as possible. It's the way everyone will be building in not too distant future. So you're only putting off the inevitable. Also, get into a space that you can get passionate about and enjoy and go to bed at night saying, I'm building something better than average for my customer. Like, there is so many upsides. Think of it also as de-risking your project. Ventilation in your project reduces those moisture-related issues. So you're de-risking it. It will drive you through tighter documentation, which seems tedious and does add a little cost layer, but it, again, as a builder, it just provides you certainty and risk protection. So don't shy away from expanding your knowledge and taking on something of just a bit larger than what you've previously done. It is the way everyone will be doing it.
And not only that, the support and the information and people like yourself, Matt, myself, Drew, all these people out here now who have done it, they've gone through it, they understand it. It's a standard in our buildings now.
It's easy. The answers are there.
The answers are there and the advice is there to be given. Now, we had to figure it out.
Yep.
I remember some of the first times I'm talking to you going, what the fuck is this ventilation business?
Yep. There's some great organisations, SBA, Passive House Association, and all those people in those kind of groups are really willing to share information, as you guys know. You're often the sharers of that information. So
sharing is caring. Joel, thank you very much. We just from not just coming on today, but also the help that you've provided for both of us over the last probably 5-6 years. You've helped our businesses get to where they are. Without you, we can't build the homes that we do. So thank you.
Thank you, mate.
And it's very much been a mutual partnership. So we're symbiotic, as I like to say, or parasitic, one or the other.